go anywhere. We know that they move thousands of kilometers, and so it's easy for them to come here. And they're not in the numbers that you'll see the whiteback vultures in the parks, but they're certainly here.
Yeah. And also, just on that, what is the status of vultures at the moment? 'Cause as you were saying, sort of endangered sort of gets a bit overused sometimes.
Yeah, the term endangered is oftentimes misused. There's very specific criteria for red data species, and the Cape vulture is classified as threatened, and I believe all of the vultures, well, except for the Egyptian vulture, which has never been common here, and in South Africa, and has only been recorded in a few places. That's a different category, but the others are I believe they're all threatened now. But remember that a whiteback vulture goes all the way through sub-Saharan Africa, so it's found quite widely, as are the other birds.
Yeah.
So, but it's they aren't quote unquote endangered; they're actually threatened.
Threatened, yeah. So they could go into that endangered category, but they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, you get threatened, and then you get endangered, and then you get critically endangered.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got a question here from Randy, and Randy would like to know: can vultures hunt for themselves, or are they purely scavengers?
Well, that's a good question. There's of course different species doing different things. You get something like the small hooded vulture he's not really set up for any sort of hunting. He usually picks small pieces of meat up. He also eats the scat of things like lions and other things, because there's a lot of nutrition in those, and bones and all sorts of things. There have been some records of some vultures actually killing things, but lappet-faced vultures and white-headed are the two that most people think about this sort of behavior. Lappet-faced vultures have been known to go into flamingo colonies and take young and eggs. There's a lot of speculation. People will see a lappet-faced vulture on a carcass of a small animal, say a francolin or a small mammal, and they say people will say, well, he must have killed it. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Most vultures are great pirates. They'll steal from each other, and the lappets are probably the best pirates, and they will run other birds off carcasses. They'll even sometimes chase jackals off carcasses.
Sure.
So just because you don't see another bird there, say a tawny eagle, which may have killed something, doesn't mean that the lappet killed it. It could have run something else off. But again, who knows?
Could be, yeah.
You actually need to see it to really know.
Yeah, and I think you were saying some of the stories that you hear, there's a few holes in those stories.
Sure.
So I think we do have to be a bit careful about that one, I think. But as I say, it's nice to actually hear, your side of things, because too often we do sort of read things and you start to think, oh, that is true, that is definitely true because you've read it. And actually sometimes it can be misprinted. So
they do. No, a lappet and a white-headed vulture have much better feet for clasping things than, say, a gyps vulture, the whitebacks and the capes. And the other thing is, there's been stories of these gyps vultures, the Eurasian griffon, they say killing cattle. But usually when you hear the story, it's an animal that's sick and down and can't get up, or young animals that maybe are not going to survive, or sometimes people will see an animal on a stillborn, a bird on a stillborn, and if you come up afterwards, you don't really know.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be careful.
Yeah, you do. But why are vultures so important? I mean, they're becoming threatened, but why are they so important? I mean, can the world not do without vultures?
Well, you could probably do without vultures, but you might not like the alternatives. They clean up things. They will eat a carcass, and if it was left there, what would happen? The flies would get in it. You'd have maggots. You'd have more flies. So that's one thing. You can feed a vulture, a gyps vulture, a live anthrax bacteria, and that will die in his gut. Now the spore will pass through if it's sporulated, but if a vulture gets in there early, the spore won't form. So they can actually help prevent the disease. Now there's a lot of speculation as to whether they may spread it as well, but I think they probably do more good than not. And you look in places like South Asia where there's many animals that die, and the vultures were in huge numbers and cleaned up lots and lots of carcasses.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sorry, I think I stole somebody else's question. I didn't quite catch who it was there, but apologies. Sorry, who was that? Robin. Sorry, Robin.
Hi,
I stole
Robin.
your question. But see, great minds think alike, hey?
Yeah.
But I do have another question from Leslie this time,
Okay.
and she would like to know how big are the vulture's eggs and what colour are they?
They are, Cape vulture eggs are about the size of a turkey egg, about like this, weighing about 250 grams, plus or minus. And the whiteback, even though it's smaller, there's a bit about the same, and they're kind of a whitish, creamish color.
Yeah.
You know.
So, yeah. And how many would they usually lay, actually?
Normally they lay one,
Just the
but
one.
occasionally they do lay two. Oftentimes those two eggs don't hatch, but sometimes they do, but rarely. In fact, with over 20,000 nesting attempts, I only have one incident where it appears that both chicks survived, because the parents are very good. They take turns watching the chick and incubating, and so one bird's off foraging and the other one's taking care of the chick, staying with the chick all day. And when you start doing the sums, they really couldn't energetically sustain two chicks. Yeah,
But would you not get the siblicide going on where one chick kills the other in that sense?
that doesn't seem to be work like it does with some of the eagles.
Yeah.
It's I think they squabble. Vultures definitely squabble, no doubt about it. But they're not aggressive like at that stage, like the young eagle is, the black eagle, or some of the others.
Okay. So I'm definitely learning a lot here. But I'm just going to move on to the Peregrine Fund, because you're part of the Peregrine Fund.
Well, yeah, I'm not part of the Peregrine
Okay.
Fund, but I've worked with the Peregrine Fund, and the Peregrine Fund is helps support my research here, and then I've gone to South Asia with them as well.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask about that, because you have been doing a lot of work out there with the Asian vultures as well. So how did that all come about?
Well, there was South Asia was quite interesting, even though you've got quite a unique situation. You have the Hindus and the Hindu culture who reveres the cow. It's against the law to kill a cow. They don't eat a cow. And then in Pakistan, next door, you've got the Muslim population who, if an animal dies, they will eat a cow, but if it dies and isn't properly slaughtered, they won't touch it. It's haram. It's unclean. So, again, you've got huge numbers of animals. And in some areas, like in the Indus Plain in Pakistan, it's basically desert and it's got a lot of water at the moment because it's been flooded, but it's flat and it's desert, and it gets its rain through snowmelt, it gets its water through snowmelt mainly, and so there is oftentimes high mortality, and there they've planted a lot. They've got a lot of canals for flood control when the waters come down, and they planted trees along them, so there's lots of potential nest sites. And then, of course, India's got lots of forests, and there's places for them to nest. But so there were huge numbers of vultures, a lot of food, lots of places to nest, and then they started disappearing. People started noticing them dying, and the Peregrine Fund I was asked by Dr. Rick Watson, who is a South African now living in my hometown, Boise, Idaho, where the Peregrine Fund is based. I'd met him at WITS 30 years ago, and he said, would you like to go to Pakistan? And of course I said yes. And there's a fellow named Munir Varani who works for the Peregrine Fund, living in Nairobi, and he was kind of the point man because he speaks Hindi and Urdu. And I met Munir there, and a fellow named Lindsay Oakes, who's from Washington State University, who is a vet